Hey, everybody, and happy holidays from Looking Up. If you're joining us for the first time, we're a podcast for Christian women. I'm Kathy Pollard, and with me is your other host, Carla Moore. And today we're going to talk about sort of a year end reflection as we're closing out December. And we're going to be thinking about ways that God's been with us or things that God has done for us. And before we get into that, Carla and I usually chit chat for a little bit, and we think everything we talk about is highly entertaining and interesting and engaging. But maybe, Carla, maybe not everybody feels the same way. What do you think?
Well, I don't know what's wrong with them if they don't love
That's
everything that we
right.
have to say. But that's
I
funny.
mean, when
That's one of the
when
things
we
I
go
jotted
on and
down.
on, go
We
ahead.
are
Yeah,
not everyone's cup of tea, and that is okay.
exactly. Yes, I was thinking about our last one when we just kind of rambled on and on about deviled eggs and cottage
Yeah.
cheese, and I was
Yeah.
like, people
That may
might
have
want
been
to
a little too
skip.
much.
Yeah, what in the world?
We should have kept that on the other side of the chit
Uh,
with like on the chit chat that you and I have.
yeah, before we hit record.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
we really do want this to be conversation style, and we want people listening in to feel like they're just sitting at a kitchen table with us. Fix your favorite drink. Let's have a chat together. So, but sometimes I think maybe we
A
take
little
that a
too
little
much.
too far.
Yeah.
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 Uh,
New Year's
I was about
resolution.
I was about to say if we start talking about laundry, we
Oh,
know we're in trouble. But I actually have a laundry story to share.
oh, is it a good one or a bad one?
Well, so the other day I was washing my whites,
Hmm.
and when I went to pull the clothes out to put them in the dryer, every single item was
Oh no.
bright yellow. And I thought, Neil has left a highlighter in his pants pocket because when he reads or studies, he tends to study with
Hmm.
a highlighter. And I thought, oh no, and so I'm pulling everything out. I mean, bright white fluffy towels are just lemon yellow.
Oh
And
no.
I had a tank top in there that's mostly white and some gray. Now it's bright yellow and gray. And just Neil's crisp white t-shirt, bright yellow. I mean, completely solid, not splotchy. So it was so bizarre. Well, I looked and I didn't see anything in there. And then I thought maybe it's our water. Maybe something weird has happened to the city water.
You don't want yellow
And
water.
no, that can't be good.
No.
And so I poured water, like hot water, because it was a hot load, and I'm holding it up in a clear glass. It looks fine. And so I put everything in the dryer. Well, I was nervous about washing the next load because what if it's my washing machine? But it was fine. So it finally hit me. It had to have been something dissolvable. And that's when I knew exactly what it was. And I said, Neil takes turmeric. And I said, did you put some of those turmeric supplements in one of your pockets and leave it in there? And he went,
Oh man.
and
Did it
he
come
did.
out?
He, I,
Is it
oh,
stained?
I don't, I mean, none of it's really something that we're going to wear out in public. So I didn't bother to go back and try and bleach it all. But yeah, they're definitely stained. But he had put a couple of turmeric supplements in his pocket, I guess to take later. Like he probably stuck it in his pocket to take it on the way to work or something and just
Hmm.
completely forgot.
Yeah,
And I'm telling
totally
you,
understandable.
it is a natural dye for sure.
Well, so here's your tip for the day. If you want something dyed yellow, use a turmeric supplement.
Throw some turmeric in the wash, man.
Yeah. Well, you know how when you leave a Kleenex in your pocket, and
Oh,
I've had
that's the
lots of
worst.
Kleenexes in my pocket,
Yes.
and then you open
Yeah.
the dryer door and it's like
Confetti.
snow. Yeah.
Kleenex
Hmm.
confetti. Oh,
Oh well,
so
laundry.
have you been thrifting since the last time we talked?
I did briefly. I found a really fun cashmere vintage Disney sweater. And I
Oh,
have not researched it yet. I kind of briefly did at the store, but it's got a little
mhm.
teeny tiny Mickey Mouse on it. And the label in the back of it is really worn and it says vintage Disney. Sometimes when things say vintage, they're not
Yeah,
vintage, but you
right.
can tell it's been around. And I, looked it over for holes and things and it looked good. I think it's a women's bright green, kind of Christmassy. I don't know
Oh,
if I'm gonna it depends on how much it's worth. If it's worth something, I'll sell it. If not, then I'll keep it. But
do you,
cashmere is
do you
always
have it with
valuable.
you?
No, I forget.
Oh,
Today,
you were rushing like crazy.
yeah, I thought I had an appointment at noon and it's at 11. So I messaged you really quick and we're doing the whole, no, I have to do peaches. No, I have an appointment. No, tomorrow. So here we are in our little hour window. So people are probably grateful today because we only have an hour from start to finish. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
anyway,
right.
I'm glad to be here with all of my equipment, but I didn't bring anything extra.
Yeah, I don't have anything extra either. What are your Christmas plans?
We are actually going to get Emmy on Saturday. Jordan and Aaron coming down for a wedding, and so they will leave Emmy with us for a couple days, and then John will take her back home and bring Jackson back until the rest of the family comes. I believe is today's Wednesday, so we're going to do Christmas next Thursday through Saturday with our immediate family. So we'll get together with the Garner side, my mom and my brother and his family, probably Thursday night, and then we'll do our family Christmas during the day Friday, and I think everybody will go home on Saturday. And then Sunday evening, I believe we're going to have dinner with friends. That's Christmas Eve, and then when is Christmas? Monday. Monday. We're going to have some friends over too. So, what are y'all doing?
Wow, not near that much, but similar as far as how our family goes. All of the kids and their kids are coming over Friday night, the Friday night before, and they're all going to spend the night here. So that'll be fun. And then we'll have Christmas Eve dinner, and then the next morning we'll all have Christmas together. And then on Christmas Day, we're going to my sister's house, and we'll have Christmas there with her and Bud and my mom and her husband Ray. So that's what we're doing.
Well, has Carl, I know he's your traditionalist. Is he okay with doing Christmas not on Christmas?
Well, he has to be this year because the whole reason we're doing this is because they're going to be in Georgia with Emily's family on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, like we've said before, it doesn't matter when we do it, as long as we get to be together, I'm good.
Exactly. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. Yeah. Well, this year seems so different. I feel like Christmas just snuck up on us before we were ready, and we got a tree late. In fact, when we went to find it, it was like tornado weather in Bowling Green. And
I meant to ask you, did y'all have really bad weather?
We did, and it was terrifying just because of what it was almost 2 years ago to the day that we had the bad tornado come devastate everything in Bowling Green, and just that whole sense of, the tornado sirens were going on when we were in town.
Yeah.
And we turned on this storm chaser, this live storm chaser guy, and he was like, the funnel cloud is over downtown Bowling Green.
Really?
And so we ended up detouring and going to the church building and going into the ladies' bathroom and crawling under the sink. And we sat there huddled under the sink. Yeah. And so anyway, meanwhile, the trees in the back of the truck.
Was it still there when you got back out?
It was, yeah. And so we, got it home and set it up, and we didn't decorate it or put the lights on it or anything. And so I ended up doing that yesterday by myself. I've never ever decorated a Christmas tree by myself. That's like a family event. So I only put maybe a fifth of the ornaments on there that we usually do. And Neil came home and he was like, where's the rest of the ornaments? I said, we'll be taking this thing back down in 2 weeks. I think this year we're going to call it good.
Yeah.
So it's very simple.
Well, that was, I can't, what day was that?
Saturday.
I can't remember where I was, but I was out of pocket, and I was just getting little bits and pieces of information about bad weather in Nashville and Tennessee, just various areas. I'm sorry to hear about such bad weather. It's scary.
It is scary. It didn't used to scare me so much, but now that we've seen it up close and personal, it just, and our family we're huddled under the bathroom sink, and we're all checking in with each other. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And then start sending out those messages, I love everybody. I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. I love you. It's like, just in case, and so, and I wasn't really too concerned until we started doing that. And then here I am huddled in the on the floor, and I've got tears streaming down my cheeks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But that's okay. It actually, there was some pretty big damage, I think, in Russellville. Some slight damage here, mostly just from wind. And of course, the tornado touched down in the whole, I guess, Nashville area and stuff. But it was almost like there were 3 tornadoes going on at the same time in this sort of triangular area. And we're all just watching it to see what's going to happen and where it's going to jump. And
it seems like, I don't know if this is true or not. It feels like things have changed as far as
Mm-hmm.
bad weather, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
shifted east, because used to be you'd hear about so many of them in Oklahoma, and I know they still have them. Maybe we don't hear as much because they're accustomed to it, and they have, I think things are built a little bit more to withstand higher winds. But I mean, even we in Central Texas had lots of high winds and tornadoes. And in fact, the day I found out I was pregnant with Micah was the Gerald tornado that was like an F4, really big tornado. But we don't have them as much anymore. And you hear so much more about your area, Nashville
Mm-hmm.
area. And I don't know if it's just a change in weather or if it's just that I pay more attention now.
I know. I kind of feel the same way because we certainly didn't expect it. We didn't know we were moving to an area that even had tornadoes. I guess that was
Yeah.
ignorance on our part. I found out last night we had ladies' Bible class over here. I was talking to Sherry Simpson, and she lives we have a little community called Plano. So Gary and Chelsea live in that area. Several of our members live in that area. And since the tornado 2 years ago, the little fire department over there has built on a supposed to be tornado proof storm shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And so several of our members actually, she said she went there. They ended up going there, and there were several other of our members there hunkered down in the storm shelter.
Yeah.
So just, some changes that have occurred in the 2 years
Mm-hmm.
since this happened. But I just kept thinking about, I mean, it was anxious enough for me, and we had trees come down, but we didn't really sustain serious damage. We lost
Mm-hmm.
electricity 2 years ago, but I just kept thinking about all those people that did. Their homes were leveled, and or their businesses were leveled. What must they have been thinking and feeling?
Right.
You just had to be thinking, oh no, here we go again. And
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Excuse me. Yeah, some who've just now repaired things, and to think
Mm-hmm.
about going through it again. I had a cousin that went through a tornado in Jackson, Tennessee. It's been more than 10 years, because I know she recently posted about the 10-year anniversary, and she really did have like PTSD anytime
Mm-hmm.
there's thunder and lightning, and the thought of high winds and stuff. It just really sends
Mm-hmm.
her into a scary place. So I know it's real.
Yeah, I believe that.
Glad y'all
Yeah.
are okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to share before we jump into our topic since we're a little bit rushed
Well,
today?
yeah, a little bit rushed. I wanted to mention that we did here in Dripping Springs had a living with loss, a widowhood workshop this past
Mm-hmm.
weekend with Dean Miller.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you had told me that y'all had him there in Bowling Green, or did you have him in
Yes,
Denver?
and Bowling Green.
Yeah, well, it was excellent. You had told me it
Mm-hmm.
was, and I missed Saturday. I ended up being sick on Saturday, but I was able to go on Sunday, and it was so good. It was just so good. And not just for people who are widowed, but for anyone who suffered loss. And I think that pretty much applies to all of us. And even if you haven't, it helps you to understand how to help people and how to support people who are going through that. So if anybody has any opportunity to go to listen to one of his seminars, I would encourage you to do that. So
He also has some really good resources. He's written some
mhm.
books. Yeah, you can look him up, Dean Miller, and he goes all over the country. And I felt the exact same way you did. When he came here, I was really going just to be supportive of the fact that
Mhm.
we're hosting this function. I had no idea that it would be so impactful for even people who haven't yet experienced that kind of loss.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really is very helpful, very excellent. Kind of just reminds you of your perspective in life, and in a lot of good ways. it's
Yeah.
it's really good.
Yep. It
Well,
was.
good. Glad you
That's
guys
it.
got to experience that also.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about sort of year-end reflections, as I mentioned. And I really wanted us to go in the direction of what has God done for you, or just more of a statement, what God has done for you. Because I feel like there are some things that maybe if we don't see them day to day, you can look back over the year and know for a fact, God was with us. And maybe it's just a great way to close out a year, close the chapter on 2023 as we get ready to start a new chapter in 2024. And I don't know about you, but I kind of like this time of year. I love thinking about those kinds of things. I love thinking about the whole fresh start of a brand new year. And so I thought this would be appropriate just to sort of remind ourselves. And I'm sure that Many of us experienced challenges or hardships or heartaches of some sort also in 2023. And even in those, can still look back and see, the goodness of God through it all. So that's what I was hoping we would kind of talk about today, just kind of direct our minds um, to God's presence in our lives and how He's been with us this year. So I kind of thought we might do that by just asking a few questions, a few simple questions. And the first one is what I just stated. How has God been with you? And no matter who we are, where we are, how old we are, that's a fact for all of us because it's a promise in His word. He has promised He will always be with us. We're not alone. Perhaps there are times when we struggle with that and we feel like we are. And we've mentioned this, I'm pretty sure, before on some episode, but loneliness isn't necessarily that you're all by yourself. You could feel lonely in a room full of people. You can feel lonely sitting on the pew surrounded by a bunch of Christians in worship. A lot of times loneliness comes when you're struggling with something, maybe it's personal, or you're going through something and you feel like nobody else really understands. We may have these periods of loneliness, but even then, God has been with us because He has promised He will never leave us and never forsake us. So I thought maybe that's the best place to start. Just kind of ask yourself, look back over your year, month by month, event by event, and think about all the ways that you can look back and see, yes, God was with us. God was with us. God was with our loved ones. God was with our venture, our home, our plans, whatever it might be. And I just feel like what a faith building way to close out a year as you think about starting the new year and wondering about what's ahead.
Have you ever done a word study on just the word with?
No. Have you?
Well, I briefly looked into it. I mean, I didn't really dig into it like I wanted to because it was a little bit over my head, just a simple word with.
I know.
But
I
you know
never thought
how,
about it.
well, we pray all the time. God,
True.
please be with.
Right.
Be with me as I do this, be with so and so. And we just kind of casually say, please be with. And I got to thinking one day, what exactly does that mean? And I mean, I know what it means in English, and I kind of know what it means in Hebrew, Greek, whatever. But when you really look at it,
Hmm.
it's really interesting. And I need to do it again because what I did find, this is probably a year or two ago, it's it's so empowering because it's like it gives all of the directions, like behind, before, surrounding. I can't even remember, and I didn't even think to look it up for this episode, but just thinking about how is God with us, and
Mm-hmm.
that He is here, He is present, He is around us, He is surrounding us, He is before us. The Bible talks about, I'll go before you, and He's behind us, He's watching out for us. And just thinking about God is with us is such a profound thought,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes I look, when we're in Colorado, I look at the mountains and think the God that put those together, the being that designed that, you can't even reach the top of some of them. There's places that people have never been. And yet the one who created that knows me. He's with me. And that's just something I think we have to think about when we feel alone, or when we feel like we're powerless, or we have been mistreated, or whatever, that God is with us. I mean, we can turn our backs on God and He will depart from us, but it doesn't have to be that way, and it's up to us. So I think I'm going to do that this week. Just look back again at that word, or maybe ask somebody that knows how to do that better to really get a better definition of it. But it's very, very cool.
Me too. I'm going to do that too. I love that. I love
No,
that. I love this about our friendship. You're so smart. You think about things.
I'm
As soon as
not.
you said that, I was just so interested. And I thought, of course you did that. I love that.
Yeah, well, I when I say word study, mine is just looking up the definition. I'm not like spending all day on it like some people do. I don't even really know how to do a complete word study, but
here is how the word has morphed through the
yeah.
centuries.
Yeah, the lemma, the what, blah, 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 blah. I
Yeah.
still haven't got a firm grasp on what all of those things mean. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell
Okay,
Michael.
I won't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Yes, I'm going to do that too. And I think,
Yeah.
there are times when, even though mentally we know all that's true, He is with us, He does surround us. Sometimes we just don't feel like it. And maybe in our minds, we think that we should feel His presence. It should manifest itself in some certain way that we're expecting, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe we feel cold and distant from God. We feel like He's distant. Sometimes that comes through a season of heartfelt prayer and petitions when we don't feel like we're seeing the answers or feeling comforted or resolution,
Yeah.
and we start wondering, is He still there? Is He listening? And so it's good to be reminded that regardless of how we're feeling, even though those feelings are strong, God's word and promises are true.
Mm-hmm.
And He is with us. And maybe it's things getting in the way of that, of being able to take confidence in that. Things like fear. There's all different things. We're just talking about a tornado. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Things to be fearful about. Maybe it's in fear of the future and what the new year does hold because of things that you're facing or what lies
Yeah.
ahead. It could be spiritual apathy. Have you just kind of let things crowd out your quiet time with God and His Word, or distractions, or sin or selfishness? There are things that can kind of creep in slowly and take root, and next thing we know, we feel like God's distant from us. And so, if you feel like that's something that you don't have confidence in, even though it's a promise from God's Word, that's a time to do a little bit of a heart check, maybe, and see, what are some ways that I can do better about that in the new year? Do I need to be more intentional about quiet time with God, and what I'm allowing to take up time in my life and in my heart, and things like that? So anyway, but the promise is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just maybe in our prayers tonight, if anybody journals, or I don't really journal, but I do jot things in my planner.
Mm-hmm.
And, um, look back over through your planner or things, and just look for specific ways where yes, for sure. I know He's always with us, but what about in this moment? What about in this moment? What about how this turned out with our children or our friends or this situation? And then maybe go beyond a step further and share it with somebody. Share those faith building affirmations with the people around you. It's so that we can all be reminded God is always with us.
There's a song, I know I've talked about it before. It's called Blessings by Laura Story. And I'm looking at the words because I never can remember them exactly. But at the very end, or maybe it's the chorus, she says, "What if the trials of this life, the rain, the storms, the hardest nights are your mercies in disguise?" And the whole song, it just is very meaningful. But having been through a scary thing, and literally knowing, having that rock solid confidence that God is here in this moment too, that there's nothing more empowering, faith building and empowering than that. And just the whole knowledge that there is not a day ahead that God hasn't seen. Time doesn't exist to Him. He knows everything that's going to happen in 2024. And He knows that we're going to be afraid of some things, and He's there for it. He's there. And He knows that we're going to be exhilarated, or we're going to be excited, or we're going to be sad, for whatever the things that go on in this life. But we can always learn from any of them. We can learn from the happy, but I think we learn more from the hard. And we just have to be ready to say, okay, God, what is it that you want me to learn from this? What is it that I can be better about? How can this make me more like you? And And then just the knowledge that he's always there. That what Jacob wrote in my scripture writing book, that week of things that were going on,
Mm-hmm.
God knew what this day was, even the way he wrote it. And I don't know if he intended to write it that way, but I've thought about it so many times. God knew what this day was,
Mm-hmm.
not what this day held or what happened this day, but God knew what this day was, because that day was a hallmark, and it's one of those kind of days that you look back on and you remember, and he was there. And so you can even be thankful for things like that when when you have the faith that God's walking through every step with you.
Mm-hmm. And that's really a perfect segue into the next question. And that is, how has God comforted you? And, he's promised to always be with us. But looking back over the years, we mentioned there were probably some tears along the way and some grief or sadness or despair, because that's where we're in this life and not the next, as I've heard it put. And things are going to happen. And so we've all had those valleys in this year too. And maybe some of us would say we've had more valleys than we have mountaintops. Maybe it's been a really difficult year for some, and battling long-term illness or loss or whatever it might be. I'm sure you, like me, can think of people close to you that have had a really difficult year. And so, how has God comforted you? And the promise that He's with us is comforting in itself, but He is such a good and generous God. He goes beyond that. And I think about the different avenues that He uses for that. I'm not saying that we can ever look back and say, that was God, that was God, that was God, that was God. But there are some things to me that seem pretty obvious. Think about the Christian family. Um, I've always felt like when you go through something and your church family jumps in and they put their arms around you, they lend a hand, they're with you in your weak moments, or your, I can't pull out of this by myself, I need help moments, whatever it might be. I'm always wondering what people do without God's family. And, that's a blessing. And maybe that comfort came in a more generic way. Maybe you didn't share anything with anybody, but just going to worship with God's people and getting a hug that day, hearing your brothers and sisters in Christ around you singing praise to God, and all those voices lifted up together. That's comforting to me. So there's all these different avenues that God has. We have a comforter, we have prayer, we have all of comfort from His word and all those beautiful psalms and things, comfort from His presence. But maybe looking back over the year, you can think, you know what, this day, this thing just happened at just the right moment when I needed it. What was that thing? Was it something from your church family? Was it just, a beautiful, you mentioned the mountains and the beauty of that and the majesty and how it draws your mind to God and His, greatness. I was thinking about that after the tornado, the day of the tornado. It was dark, it was stormy, it was gray, it was swirly, it was just, just so symbolic of how we feel sometimes. The very next day, the sun was out.
Yeah.
And the birds were singing and it was still. And I remember looking outside and thinking, wow, was that just yesterday? I mean, the contrast is remarkable, but it was such a huge reminder and so comforting, after the storm. Weeping endures for the night, as the Bible says, but joy comes in the morning. Yeah. It's like just a little reminder, and to me, there are those moments all along the way in life of God's being with you and comforting you through whatever you might be facing.
Yeah. You have to look for it.
True.
And we don't always do that. We just sail past and we go, whew, made it through that. And we don't even stop to consider what part God played in it. And He always does. And I think we're so afraid, some of us anyway, are afraid to say that God was in that moment, because we don't want to, I know we need to be careful to say we know exactly how God is working, because we don't always know. But and I think we're so careful in the way that we say things, and here I am being careful, that we almost we almost like skim over it and almost deny it. And
Or
he
even
absolutely
discredit
does
him.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. If the devil is working in this world, why
Mhm.
would we think that God is not working in this world?
Well, and why would we not give him praise and credit when we encourage each other to do that for each other?
Yeah.
And you think about Paul's writings and how he lifted up people that were doing good work. And we always say how important it is that we encourage each other and acknowledge goodness and praise each other. And why would we not do that for God? I think I've learned so much from Russell Simpson because he's one of our elders and he is so good about that. Almost whatever we're talking about, if it has to do with camp or, people visiting or something good turned out for somebody or even something that he's done, if you try and say good job
Mm-hmm.
to him and he does wonderful work as one of our shepherds, he'll say that was all God. And
Yeah.
he is so genuine about that. He is so comfortable with those kinds of statements.
Mm-hmm.
That was all God. God is amazing. He is doing wonderful things. I am so excited to see what God has been doing. He
Yeah.
always says that, and it just sounds so completely natural. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that I've ever really known somebody that comfortable speaking that way. And it encourages me
Mm-hmm.
to hear it because I feel like in my mind I'm going, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Even though I believe that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I go around saying that. And why not?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe it would be a fun project in this new year to, as you were saying, you have to look for it. So pray for those kinds of eyes that look for it and see it and acknowledge it. Write it down, share it with somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and back to the being careful. I understand why people are careful because Joseph said maybe this is why this
Mm-hmm.
happened, and
Mm-hmm.
as far as Esther,
Who
perhaps you were
knows?
brought,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but yeah, he's active in our lives and cares for us and wants to help us, but we have to be willing to accept it and look for it and ask for it. And so, man, what you were talking about the church family, and by the way, you're so good, especially on Sundays, to always point people to remember what is so good about Sundays, and it's the Lord's Day and the things that we get to do, we get to worship, because some people dread worship. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
exactly why, if it's just that they have a hard time being around people, or if it's just there's something they'd rather do. But it's always encouraging to see your Facebook post on Sunday to remind people what we're doing, what Sundays are for. But anyway, lost my train of
Yeah.
thought, so I'm gonna toss it back to you. The train left the station.
Glad I'm not the only one that happens to.
I don't know where I was going with that, but
I'm sure it was going to be so good.
it's profound. I know it was.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. But okay, we'll just move on to the next one.
Okay.
How has God grown you? How has
Hmm.
God grown you? And sometimes these are uncomfortable. One of the quotes that I share periodically is something about you can't grow inside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that's true, but it just reminds me that there is growth outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And oh, I know what I wanted to say about that other topic.
Okay.
When you started talking, I thought about, is it James 1:17 that says every good and perfect gift comes from above? So you were
It's in
talking about
James.
being James somewhere.
Yeah, it probably
You were
is.
talking about we're sometimes careful about saying this was God or whatever,
Yeah.
but we do know that every good and perfect gift comes from him.
Yeah.
So we
Mm-hmm.
can know that for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes
Okay.
those good and perfect may not look good and perfect, but they are good and
Yes.
perfect.
Yes. Yeah. All
Okay.
right. So, how has God grown you? And was there some point in this past year where you really got stretched out of your comfort zone, and or that there was a situation that you had to overcome an obstacle or learn something new to get through it, or you were challenged in some way, and you just mentioned that to see God comforting you, you have to have eyes that are open for that. You have to look for that. And perhaps in this particular question, how has God grown you? Sometimes those opportunities are there and we don't take them. So it could be that you might look back over this year and think, I feel like it was a pretty, stale or stagnant year. I don't
Mhm.
really feel like I've experienced any growth. Did you
Nothing
have an
scared me.
Nothing scared me, nothing stretched me, nothing pushed me out of my comfort zone. Did you just overlook an opportunity? Did you just not say yes?
Mhm.
Did you offer up an excuse instead? Did you refuse to try something? Perhaps that was the case, maybe not. But again, I feel like those opportunities are there. Hopefully, we're all praying that we continue to grow spiritually. We know we need to, and that we're supposed to be adding to our faith and growing. Um, so sometimes we're praying about it, and then when those opportunities come along, we don't recognize it as that growth opportunity. We just think, no, 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 that's not for me. That's not really my thing. I'm not really comfortable about that. Or, don't make me people, as we've
Yeah.
mentioned before.
Mhm.
Shame on us when that happens. And I'm saying we because I know I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Because when we do step out, that's when we get to see new things and experience new things and grow and stretch. And God can use us in ways that we never thought He could before, I believe.
Yeah. I have learned that when your friend calls and says, let's do a podcast together, maybe to put a little more thought. No, I'm kidding. I'm glad you did. But that's, you know, I was just trying to think what have I done this year that scared me? And anytime I haven't done a whole lot of things that just terrified me because I tend to not I am a little bit like, I don't want to be scared. But
Mm-hmm.
I also know because I've been there and done it enough that you really do. We did an episode on comfort zones, but you really do find out that you can get outside your little comfortable boat and you'll be okay. You're not going to drown.
Mm-hmm.
So just you have to do it though. You have to make yourself do it.
You
And there's a
do.
lot of people that don't make themselves do anything. And
Mm-hmm.
that's frustrating to me, just to be perfectly honest.
Mm-hmm.
You're only going to do, you're not going to expose yourself to anything that makes you feel uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking about some hard things that are going on in the world right now. We don't want to think about what people in Ukraine, people in Gaza, people in Israel, we don't want to think about it. And so we just kind of go, la, la, la. I don't want to, don't tell me, don't listen. I don't want to read any books that are going to make me sad because of something true that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to be exposed to worship or sermons that are going to make me hurt because I don't like to hurt. And shame on us when we do that, because that's the perfect opportunity for growth. It's a perfect opportunity to learn empathy and compassion and all of those things that God wants us to have for our fellow man. So shame on me when I don't, you don't really want to, I don't know if I want to say embrace it, but I guess embrace it, or at least just submit to it.
Well, sometimes it comes from just from doing things God's way.
Mm-hmm.
Think about conflict resolution.
Mm, yeah.
And, it's a lot easier to just ignore it or to talk to other people about it. But if you've got something against somebody else, to do things God's way takes a bit of courage
A
and
lot of courage.
humility, to go to that person one on one and address it. But what a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
Maybe growth opportunities come through commitment. I think about, commitments require things from us.
Mm,
Time, effort, whatever it might be. So maybe committing to just making that commitment to, I'm just going to be better about having more people into my home.
yeah.
Doesn't have to be big and fancy, but I want to get to know people. I want to be hospitable. I want to, maybe once a month, I'm going to have people into my home. Well, that's a commitment that requires something of you, but sticking with it and actually doing it and putting that effort into it is going to be a wonderful growth opportunity. Maybe that commitment is agreeing to teach Bible class in the upcoming quarter, or to be better about going and encouraging people by visiting them, whether it's the shut-ins or hospital visits or whatever. Or maybe it's growing your relationships. I'm not going to be so isolated in my church family. I'm going to start being more connected and do my part. That takes commitment. and follow through. But wow, even though it required something ongoing, what a growth opportunity. And what will God do with that?
And once you do things like that and you realize that you can do it, and it actually is beneficial. It makes you feel good. Other people are going to maybe say things to you like, thanks for doing this. Like something as simple as opening your home and not having everything spick and span and spotless and perfect. And then somebody says to you, you just made me feel so at home. I just feel like, mine doesn't have to be perfect. And I just feel like one time we went over to this young family's home and things were pretty chaotic. And it was a Sunday afternoon, a Sunday lunch. And so they had just dropped everything after breakfast with 3 kids. And so, there's pancakes and stuff still on the table. And we got there for lunch and they made lunch and just kind of shifted things around. And I just felt so at home. And I loved that she didn't feel like she had to make things perfect for me. And then I made a post about it on Facebook. I said something about just so grateful for letting us in on your casual family. And then I thought, did that sound like I was saying she's junky? And so then I had to kind of back up and say, this is not what I meant. But I just thought, I feel so at home. I feel so relaxed. I feel blessed because they trusted me to come in and didn't think that I was going to judge them based on what their home looked like, So when you do things that stretch you and help you grow, it's not all sacrifice on our part. There are rewards too, and from God, but from other people when they say, oh, you just made me feel so good. And then I think I can do this too.
Well, and we have to let go of those perfectionist ideals. When we make a commitment to something, say, for example, teaching in class, and the first time we get up there and teach, somebody asks you afterwards how'd it go, and you're like, "Blah," it didn't go as like I intended, or I did this, or I did that, and a lot of times, me personally, I'm like, forget it. Obviously, I'm not meant to blah, 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 whatever it might be, but let all that stuff go and just push through and just at least stick with your commitment. If you did have people into your home and it felt awkward, or the meal didn't turn out the way you wanted, or the conversation didn't flow as warmly as you would have liked, it's how easy to just say, well, let me find something else. Just stick through with your commitment anyway. And I guarantee you, on the other end of that, you're going to look back and see the growth. So maybe, the challenge would be just pick one thing, and I'm not saying that some people are naturally good at hospitality. Some people are naturally good at teaching. And yes, we need everybody filling their roles in the body, and we all make up for each other's lack. I understand that concept and how that works. All I'm saying is, if you haven't felt like you've experienced a growth opportunity, you haven't stretched yourself, this is an easy way to do it. Just commit to something that you normally don't do, or don't really want to do, or don't think you're good at.
Yeah.
Pick one, commit to it for the next year, and then this time next year, look back and see where you are. See if God gave you growth opportunities.
Yeah, good one.
Okay, so the next one is, how has God surprised you? How has God surprised you? Now, this could morph into one of those, who knows?
Yeah. We'll just say, we understand.
We understand that. You can't, I definitely think that you can't say things like, God told me to take this job.
Right.
But you can speculate, taking this job brought about this, this, and this, and it was so unexpected. Or I think about just unexpected blessings. Can you look back over your year and see things that happened that you never anticipated? Or if it was a challenging thing, did the other side of that bring about new roads, new open doors, new relationships in your life that you never expected? And I think sometimes, you have those moments in life, maybe they're kind of rare and that's what makes them so precious, but you have those moments in life when something remarkable just happens and you just stop and go, what? That's amazing. I'm just, what? And it kind of brings you to your knees. I'm so unworthy. I can't believe God did that, you know, and I hate to say it in that way, but sometimes that's how my heart feels.
Yeah.
And it, you know, maybe it's something good that happened to your grown children, or you see God using his people to help somebody else. And not that it's unexpected that he would do that, but maybe it's just so, it turned out so much better than you had hoped for. Um, you know, and I don't really want to go down a personal road and talk about that, but just having a lot of our family members now living in this area, to
Mm-hmm.
me, that's one of those things.
Yeah.
You know how it is in ministry. It doesn't typically work out
Mm-hmm.
that way. It never has for our family. And I just look back over the past couple of years and think, what?
Uh-huh.
So, but you know, we could all probably give examples of that. And I think we need to acknowledge that. And God is consistently good and faithful. And sometimes you just have to look at things and go, what an unexpected blessing. What an amazing surprise. What a remarkable God we serve.
Yeah. They can be worldly things like
Mm-hmm.
financial.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many times when, how many times has this happened to y'all when you think, I do not know where that money is going to come from. And then
Mm-hmm.
it comes from somewhere
Mm-hmm.
and it's a blessing. And we are free to say it's a blessing. God works through his people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and other times those unexpected surprises are, spiritual. We've asked him to help us grow, and we've put some work into it, and then we've seen how we've grown, or we see the investment that we put into other people, whether
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a marriage situation or just a personal, needing trying to help other people integrate within the church, or there's just all kinds of different ways. And again, I think we have to look for, I think maybe surprises we can see, oh wow. But um, I think about, I was looking at our magnet from Christmas last year, our family magnet, and Darcy was not in, she was not even pregnant with Darcy. And that was a surprise. Not exactly, I mean, anyway, we don't, like you said, don't have to go into the whole personal part, but just looking back over the year intentionally and seeing, I guess I'm thinking of those surprises as being blessings, and they can all be blessings even if they don't feel like it.
Yeah, and I probably worded that badly because, again, I'm not trying to say that we're ever surprised at God's goodness, because God is good all the time. And he has the power to do whatever he wants. I really don't mean it that way, but just
Well, he's
something
not
that
the
was,
one surprising. It's us being
yes,
our reaction.
yes. And just the whole unexpected nature of how something turns out. And, you can probably think of examples of other people in your life and how a situation turned so completely around for them, or
Mm,
two people ended up together that you never would have guessed would have gotten together, but wow, what a beautiful
yeah.
thing. Or, just so many things like that, that I think,
Mm,
it's just fun to look back
yeah.
through the year and think, well, that was unexpected.
Yeah.
That was a
It's a great
surprise,
question.
and
Mm-hmm.
again, maybe sometimes things happen that are surprising that weren't expected, and it wasn't what you had in mind. But looking back over how it turned out, you can see how that was definitely for the best. I
Then
didn't
we can
expect it
say,
to go that way, but wow, that was definitely for the best.
and when
Yeah.
those things happen, we can just say, okay, God, I'm gonna try to learn whatever I can from this.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
submit.
Exactly. All right. And then the last one is, how has God changed you? And I think that this could, now that I'm saying it out loud, it can sound a little bit like the growing, stretching out of your comfort zone, but I was really thinking more along the lines of, um, sometimes you find yourself having to make a change of direction, and sometimes there's a chapter of your life that gets closed in our minds prematurely. We didn't know we were going to end this situation, this work, this relationship, this, whatever it might be, this job, this, whatever it might be. Um, but sometimes these little detours come along, and we prayerfully consider things, try to make the best choices with the information that we think we have. Maybe we never intended to do that. but things just happened, circumstances happened. And looking back over your year, you can see that um, we had to take a different direction, and we had to make some changes. And especially for some personalities, that can be really difficult. Change can be hard. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are comforted by routine and sameness, and
Mm-hmm.
change can be scary and hard. But again, looking back, what happened as a result of that change? Or maybe you're in the middle of one right now as you're closing out this year, and you've got a new year that's going to look completely different for you in some way, shape, or form. So, how has God changed you, changed your direction? Has He closed a chapter to open up another one and make way for new opportunities? And sometimes doors need to be shut because we don't have the strength or wisdom to do it ourselves. I think, definitely not in the moment. You don't see it that way, but looking back, you can see that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that was a very wise thing that needed to happen. Ultimately, we understand that as parents, with our children, and they're growing into teens, and maybe they're getting caught up in an extracurricular activity or a friendship or a relationship that you see is not really taking them in the best direction.
Mm.
Sometimes you have to intervene and you have to
Yeah.
step in and kind of nip that in the bud or redirect it. And surely God does that in our lives when we're praying for Him to give us direction and
Mm-hmm.
to guide us and to help us with our choices. Surely there are times when He has to step in and say, "This is not good for you."
Mm.
And I'm just going to close the door on that.
Yeah. Just thinking about how God really is the only unchanging thing,
Mm-hmm.
period. You think
Mm-hmm.
about what He created in nature, and seasons are always changing. The weather is always changing. We are always changing.
Mm-hmm.
We grow in the womb, and then we're born, and then we grow until we die. Um, Everything changes. So I feel like God loves change and encourages change and wants us to change because everything does change. Just like beauty, He created beauty, He created variety. So you know that He loves those things. So I think we should look forward to how we can change, because there's not a one of us that doesn't need to change something.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's, I guess, talking about character change. But for those of us who don't like change, it's really hard to embrace anything. John loves routine,
So
and
does he.
it makes me laugh. You know, I'm trying to remember this time of period of our life years ago where nothing really changed. It was routine. And anytime we did have some kind of change, it really took John a while to kind of adjust. And he was cranky, and he would say, I don't like it when things change. But now I look at our life and there's nothing but change. Every day is just never know. So it just makes me laugh because God can say, well, okay, we're gonna handle that for you.
Yeah,
Here's all
Neil
this
loves
change.
routine in his day-to-day tasks. I can tell you what his day is going to look like. Not by the time he leaves here, but like his morning routine is pretty much the same, but I've been so impressed with him taking on some new changes and embracing them and adapting, and but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, if we are resistant to change and we kind of want to hold on to something that seems like it's being pulled from us or torn from our grasp, we kind of we're hanging on to that because we're not ready to let go. We don't want to let go. I love that you pointed out that God loves change, and we can see that in so many different ways and examples, because maybe that's where our mind needs to go. To prayerfully consider, is this something that I'm supposed to let go of?
Yeah.
Is this something that I need to make a change, an area that I need to make a change in? Maybe you have people that you trust, that you look up to and respect their wisdom, and you can talk to them about it and seek some advice and counsel if you feel like you're in a situation like that. But in all of these areas and all of these things, the promise is the same and true. God is always with us, and He's always working things out for good. Romans 8:28. And I know you've probably heard people say that this is the good of the whole, not necessarily the individual. Not sure exactly how I feel about that,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that God's word is assuring us of that all along. Not that we won't experience hardships and sad things and trials, But the child of God who keeps their faith in him is going to conquer.
Mm.
And God will be with us and strengthen us. And all of those things he also promises. So we have to know that he's going to work everything out for good. If not perfectly in this life, in certain ways, definitely it'll all be made right in the end.
You look at Joseph's life and all that he went through from an early age, and the trials, being sold into slavery and being taken into this faraway land and learning a whole new culture and food and people and being mistreated and accused and thrown into prison. But yet the Bible always says God was with him. God was with him. And then at the end of his life, well, not the end of his life, but when the brothers were all brought back together, he says, maybe this is why. And so God did use all of that. He used Joseph's life, and Joseph submitted to being used in order to bring about the gospel story. So you and I are not necessarily being used in that way for that kind of gospel story, but we are used for a gospel story to bring others to him, and we have to submit to it. And sometimes it doesn't look pleasant. Sometimes it's hard. Maybe others are looking at the way we handle things in life, or maybe others are seeing how we embrace others, or we are a testimony to his life. So let him use us and change us and grow us, like
And
you
we'll just
said.
go ahead and insert right now, since you put that so beautifully. No matter what you have faced or are facing or think you may be facing, keep looking up. Colossians 3:1 and 2. That's what this whole podcast is about. But that's what God wants us to do, is to keep our eyes on him and trust in him. Keep all of our choices in a manner that pleases him, and and that serves others. Just keep looking up through it all. Keep that mentality coming into 2024, so that at the end of 2024 you can look back and know with assurance that you were pleasing to God. God used you, God changed you, God made you his vessel in every way that he needed to, because you kept looking up. And this is going to be our last episode of the year. And just looking back over the conversations I've had with you in 2023, I'm so grateful.
Don't do it.
Well, I'm so grateful. I don't think either one of us knew going in what exactly we were doing and what it was going to look like, but it has enriched my life so much. The weekly conversations with you, and also the ladies that are listening in that have reached out to us, that make comments in the group and share things about their life or ideas with us, or I just feel like it's been such a beautiful blessing. I'm thankful for that. I can look back and see God at work in that, and blessing just you and me personally.
Absolutely.
And I just want to acknowledge it and thank you for all the wisdom, the encouragement, sharing your stories. I've always loved your heart and your ability to touch hearts with how you word things and see things. And I know that I've benefited from it personally, and so have all of our listeners. I'm thankful to you for that. And I'm thankful for our friendship, and I'm thankful for this opportunity that we have, and look forward to next year. We'll start up again in a couple of weeks, starting out 2024, and pray. We continue to pray that this podcast will bless everybody listening in. We continue to ask our listeners to be patient with us. We thank you for your encouragement. We continue to ask our listeners to let us hear from you, so that this can be something we're all doing together. We all want to just keep looking up together. That's our hope and prayer for this podcast. So, but we don't want to forget something good for you. I know we need to sign off here because you got to go. Do you have time for something good for you?
A quick one, but I do want to say this.
Okay.
That I love you, and that I appreciate you pushing me out of my comfort zone to do something like this. And I have loved the weekly conversations and the pre-recording conversations, and it's enhanced, it's just been because we live so far apart. And so thank you for making the time for that. And I've always, what a blessing to have a friend that you respect, not just that you enjoy being around, but you respect, and that you can talk about the really important things with. And that there's not very many of those. So I'm so grateful for that, and grateful for being able to share our friendship with other people, and grateful for people wanting to join in with us. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Something good.
Okay.
Something good I have is puff pastry. That's just all I'm gonna say. Puff
I
pastry.
used that this week. Yes.
All the puff pastry.
Yes to all the puff pastry.
Yeah. That's all I'm gonna say.
Although, I'm sorry, I had to say this really quick. I bought some to make Emily's dessert for her birthday. I was going to do apple puff tarts, and I bought the puff pastry, only it wasn't normal puff pastry.
Was it the little boats?
It was like 6 little hexagon shaped things.
Yeah.
There's 8 of us for one thing. So that was a fail.
Yeah,
but anyway,
you have to, still good. Those were the shells. I think they call those puff pastry shells. I'm talking about the kind that you roll out.
Right. So put good stuff in. Yes. But anyway, so read the box. Yeah. Read the box on that. Mine is, I want to direct everybody to an article that my sister wrote. You can find it, Come Fill Your Cup. And it's called Overcoming the Guilt of Depression.
That's a great one.
It is. She has shared it before. She wrote it a few years ago from personal experience, struggling on her own in quiet with depression and feeling like somehow it was, a spiritual problem maybe on her part or whatever, years and years. And she finally wrote about it and got help. And I think it is a masterfully written, beautiful, helpful article. And for some people really struggle with that this time of year, with the holidays, a little bit of sadness and depression. But if that's something that you struggle with, know that you're not alone. Go to Come Fill Your Cup, look up Overcoming the Guilt of Depression. I think you'll find it a very helpful resource, and I will definitely share the link in the Looking Up page. And I think it puts on there just by guest post. I don't know that her name is on it, but she's Christy Woodall. It's written by her, and you'll be blessed by it.
I remember it.
Okay, so great way to end out the year. I look forward to starting again in the new year. God bless you and your family this holiday season. And our listeners, we love you all. And until next time,
keep looking up.